I want to pull the curtain back just a little bit more because I think the average person looks at Top Gun and goes, "Oh, they're just teaching people to be great fighter pilots," but it was a lot more than that. And you alluded earlier to what we were really trying to do with the class, and that is to send them back so that they could teach their squadron mates to be, as good as they could possibly be. So can you talk to our listeners a little bit about, and particularly I'm thinking of the debriefing process, what we're trying to get across to enable a student to be able to debrief a flight. There's a lot to that. You talk about ego. You talk about drawing on a whiteboard, 3 dimensions in 2-dimensional space. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was really what we were after, I think, more than anything, is getting behind the why behind the what.
I mean, and it comes down to like the catchphrase where I said was goods and others, right? I mean, first of all, to be able to develop the ability to perform in a very dynamic environment, but at the same time have, I don't want to say flawless recall, but to be able to accurately, reconstruct, right? Certainly without a lot of the tools they have these days, we had to go back and reconstruct what had occurred, whether it was a 1v1 or a multi-plane, exercise. But the whole idea was obviously to take a graduate level course, certainly compared to what the fleet guys were exposed to be able to not just teach them to be better pilots, right? Teach them to be more proficient in employing the weapon system, but teaching them to be able to do exactly that, to be able to go back and impart that information, to bring everybody up, but at the same time to develop the mentality where you could take someone out on an exercise or be involved in an exercise and then come back, and most importantly, through accurate recreation and recall, draw from the lessons learned, draw up the lessons learned, and then impart that to them. So basically, you're making instructors, you're making more proficient pilots, better instructors, but you're bringing everybody up. You're raising up the whole squadron or the whole air wing, right? And most importantly, it wasn't whether you won or lost. It wasn't whether you beat the other guy. It wasn't whether that you did or did not survive on the tax range or on the mission, but you were able to come back and elevate your level of learning, understanding, and instructing, to be able to draw people in. And I always tell my son this when he's gone to flight school. I said, be humble, but don't have your hat in your hand. Be receptive to criticism. Show up early, be professional, all of those things. And those were the things that we taught the students. And then the follow-on, that they went back to their air wings and were able to do that, to be able to take a group of individuals, take them out there where all of that is involved, the ego but to be able to sit down in a room and to remove all of the things that we have there that are sort of holding us back from being in receive mode, and willingly taking on those lessons learned from somebody who, may have just waxed me or may have just shown me that I'm deficient in some area and I need to get better. So the whole idea was, the mission was, everybody needs to be better. Everybody needs to be as professional as possibly can. This is valuable time, valuable equipment, and we do the most important job, and that is that we're all more combat ready than we were yesterday. Better version of yourself.
And we took great pains to keep the ego out of it, right? Because we would go like, instead of saying, why did you go in the vertical? It was like, why did the F-18 go in the vertical? I mean, is it down to the last nuance of...
It wasn't just a function of third person, first person. It was, which is one of the reasons, not to get into the movie thing, but one of the great disappointments of the first movie was that so much of what we were about wasn't accurately portrayed, because it was all about trophy and the backbiting and the competition between students. And quite frankly, when they showed up there, the very last thing we were tolerated was that the ego, the swagger, the glasses, the cowboy hats, the backbiting in the locker room, the who's going to be the best pilot. I mean, we taught those guys to be like us, to be objective, to be professional, to work together. The whole idea was to take the class, and through individual effort, sections, and then divisions, to make them work together as a team, to be that receptive to others' leadership, to their guidance, to their briefing and debriefing, to make them fight against the adversaries.
Did you guys track how effective, you were training these guys to do all this debriefing and develop this set of skills, and they were supposed to go back to their squadrons and sort of train them. Did you track how effective that was over the years?
I think that, I think the proof was in the pudding, certainly from the very early days of when the school began, right? But I think it was at least I'm speaking for myself, but I think the overall, almost universally, to get selected to go there was quite an honor. So the last thing you would do showing up there was to disappoint your commanding officer to be basically shown the door because you weren't receptive to that. Just took. I think the selection process was impressive enough just to go there. So I think the right individuals went through the school. They went back with that mission statement in hand, and at least peripherally or through feedback from our colleagues and XOs and COs and OPSOs from different squadrons on both coasts, we'd hear about the good work they did, and we'd hear also from people who had an opportunity just to be exposed to the tactics instructors and the weapons instructors that we sent back to those squadrons and said, man, we've learned some good stuff from Hollywood, from Jaws, from Bio. These guys are back in the squadron and doing good work. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, we did hear about it. We saw it. We saw it come back to us, and then we also heard about it too. So, yeah.
I just say I've reinforced that because I stayed a lot longer than you did, Hollywood, and I got to
was asked to leave.
Yeah, right. I saw a progressive improvement, very steady, very positive over time. And by the time I left being a strike group commander and I was watching these guys brief flights, it's like, wow, these guys, it really took.
Quite an evolution, yeah. Quite an evolution.
So, Hollywood, one of the other things that we sort of did also was tactics development. And that wasn't specifically our charter, but we found ourselves doing it anyway. Can you, and, not just how you fight a 1-versus-1 engagement against another airplane, but how well, when you and I were there was when the bad guys started getting the ability to basically shoot you in the face, right? And we had to respond. Can you talk a little bit about how we went about that and maybe some of how we benefited from the Air Force in that process?
That was going to be my answer to your question was, I don't want to go in the weeds about tactics. I mean, obviously it was an evolutionary process, right? I mean, the weapon systems are evolving, the tactics are evolving, the threats evolving. So obviously you have to evolve. But I think the thing that sticks out in my mind the most, and I'm not going to give Boa all the credit. I love that guy. But
Air Force exchange guy.
For the longest time, and it's like historically speaking, I mean, very parochial, the Air Force, quite a competition, as you can imagine, Air Force, Marines, Navy, everybody does it the best. And there wasn't a lot of cross-pollination of ideas. I mean, look at where we're at now. But back then, the idea came to the staff about the concept of introducing an Air Force pilot on the staff, basically an exchange tour, so to speak. I mean, we did a lot of work with the F-15 weapons school up in Nellis. That was probably the first opportunity we had to sort of get together. We'd host them down there. They'd bring us up there, in between classes. And there was a lot of opportunity to work with them, to fly against them, and to hear from those guys. But when we took Mike Strait on, he was the first Air Force exchange guy. He was a weapons school graduate, F-15 weapons school graduate. And it really opened the door. I think it really was the kickoff to what is, you're taking a lot of credit for saying this, but I really do believe that was the initiation of combined forces. I mean, we opened up our minds finally, and there was some pushback to it too, because a lot of that. Hey, what does he know? He's not a Navy guy. He doesn't have the gold wings. Blah 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 blah. But it really opened up the door and was like a starting point for, sharing concepts, sharing tactics, joint, force multiplier concepts, and working together, which is why the platforms today, the F-22 and the F-35 and the Super Hornet are, the F-15EX that's coming online. And it's like, it truly is one force. And I think it goes back to those days when we opened up our hearts and minds to being better, to putting our ego and our parochial viewpoints aside and embracing the intelligent experience and expertise that we were able to gain by doing that.
And you're right. There was some resistance. We don't need no stinking Air Force guy here. And the Air Force actually sent the perfect person down, Mike Strait. He had the best personality for that. And I would go so far as, oh God. But I would say that nobody could touch us in a 1-versus-1 dogfight at Top Gun, but nobody could touch them in a forward quarter engagement, and we learned so much from each other. It was really quite amazing.
One more, I'm going to tell a bullet story real quick, and you remember this. And again, I'm old, I'm confused, I don't have a very good memory, so I'm making this stuff up. But when he joined, I think we had just finished a class, just by happenstance. He checked the board. His wife's name was Dolly, she was everybody's cool, maybe cooler than Boa. but both a couple of little, like, they were short.
They're short.
Like,
Yeah.
both of them were. Anyway, no offense, Boa. But they checked in. We graduated the class. Remember, we'd go down to somewhere in Solana Beach or something, right? Get down there
On the
late
beach.
afternoon if we could. Had bonfires going, and Freddie Cleveland would bring the generators down. We had the blenders going. And the guys would have their surfboards out. Well, the sun sets. It's getting dark, but we're just getting started, And of course, then it starts. Like, where the hell is this guy? Where's Boa? This guy just joined. He's not even here at the party, right? So next thing you know, we're out and it's dark now, and we see this light out in the water. Everybody's like, think it's a fishing boat or something. All of a sudden, you see a second light. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And then the lights are getting closer and closer. Well, he had gone down the beach, and I don't know how far down the beach he went, but his wife, and they went in the water. They had wetsuits on, and they came up the beach, and then they came in, and that's how he made his entrance at the party. And of course, at that point, we're like, all right.
You should have done an exchange tour with the SEALs instead of Top Gun, maybe.
Badass. We like him. That's how that was his entrance to the Top Gun staff party after class. And I was like, okay, this guy's pretty cool.